and forgotten for 5 days. Ending up in an intensive care unit. And then it's done in the name of being a compassionate conservative. That's not compassion at all. So we need to understand what the real protection of liberty is all about. Now it's indicated that there may be a lawsuit coming out of this, and rightfully so. But it's always difficult when you're abused by a government to sue the government. Sometimes the government protects itself from lawsuits, especially the federal government. So we don't know exactly what will come from that. You know, I think about winning or losing the individual battles and what we strive for to win the ultimate battle. I think of a conversation between two colonels after the Vietnam War. Colonel 2 from Vietnam was talking to Colonel Harry Summers. It was shortly after the fighting stopped, and they were going back and forth on the details of ending the war. And Summers wanted to get the last, but the Veterans Administration, we have an epidemic of suicides with our military. More people dying from suicide than we do from combat. So we're not winning this war because we're not willing to take and look at what the what the CIA has told us and taught us. They said, be careful what we do. Not only are there unintended consequences with our foreign policy, but watch out, there will be blowback and we will suffer the consequences. This is the reason why we have to come to our senses and change our foreign policy to national defense and not world domination. The intellectual money. The one other problem with freedom, because people will misuse it, the one rule is you can't ever use it to hurt anybody else. But the other thing is that people are conditioned to believe that if you legalize freedom of choice of what you put in your mouth or what you put in your lungs and what you eat and all these things, that means you endorse what they do. But that's not true. You don't endorse what people do with their freedoms. We don't endorse religious freedom. Some people have various religions. Some people have no religion. But we don't, because we have freedom of religion, we don't endorse it. Intellectually, we don't say, well, we have freedom to study whatever we want. But that doesn't mean we endorse what people read or what they do. But unfortunately, for now, quite a few years, 100 years maybe, we have gotten this notion that if we allow people to make up their own minds about what they put in their bodies, it could be wrong and therefore we have to regulate. It's gotten to such a point now where you are losing your right to decide whether or not you can drink raw milk. I think in a free society, you ought to be able to smoke what you want and drink what you want. And if you do any harm to anybody else, you're in big trouble. If you do harm to yourself, you have to suffer the consequences, and you can't go begging for help from your neighbor. Drugs are very dangerous, and I admonish my children and my grandchildren to be very, very cautious because they are very dangerous, and people can get addicted. But I also know that the war on drugs has been much more damaging to our liberties, and it hurts everybody, than the drugs themselves. It's been going down for 12 years. That's why people feel badly about the way it is today. The unemployment rate for certain categories, the young teenagers, college graduates, it's very, very tough. And so when the government comes along, and today they made the announcement, the unemployment rate just went down. But what the problem is they don't count everybody. The people who drop out, they don't count. And the people who stop looking for work, and there were 34 million new people in the last 10 years. Essentially no new jobs have been created. So there's really a serious problem with the unemployment. And it's because we've had a managed economy for a long time. We have been taught by the liberal professors that the reason we get into recession, the people won't spend the money. Of course, how do you spend the money if you don't have a job and you're all maxed out on credit cards? You can't spend money. So they recognize that possibility, and the Bernankes of the world say, you know what we need to do is the government then needs to spend the money, and deficits don't matter. And the truth is, deficits do matter. And we've lived too long on the assumptions that governments are different than individuals. But individuals who live beyond their means eventually live beneath their means. And countries that do the same thing will live beneath their means, and that is what we're ushering in, an age right now of living beneath our means. And that is the reason we have to have significant changes. And it's not going back to the old days, the old age, and the old standard, the gold standard. I mean, what is old is tyranny. And the other side wants to go back and have more tyranny and more authoritarianism. So what we want to do is go back and pick up the pieces of what a free society was all about and build on it, have a better gold standard, a better understanding of foreign policy and economic policy. Now, which means if we lose a battle here and there, don't get discouraged, because we're going to win the war. And we have a better advantage than any other country because we have great traditions. We did have the freest society. We have a good document if we'd only follow it. We knew once what sound money was all about. We had a good concept of private property and contract rights. Today, of course, the government cancels contracts more than they enforce contracts. We used to have a good sound understanding about private property rights.
And that's what we ought to be doing. The system that we have today is ripping off the middle class and the poor. Can you imagine how great a nation we'd have if we didn't have the Federal Reserve System printing all this money?
Save a constitutional rights. We're not going to give up the fight. Start a revolution. Break down, break down, break down, break. Save a constitutional rights. We're not going to give up the fight. Start a revolution. Break down the illegalism. chips. Save our constitutional rights. We're not gonna give up the fight. Start a revolution and break down illegal institutions. Patriot Act took our liberties, and there's no judge, no jury. We're not gonna give up the fight. Start a revolution and break down illegal institutions.
We haven't followed the Constitution, and that's what we ought to be doing. The system that we have today is ripping off the middle class and the poor. Can you imagine how great a nation we'd have if we didn't have the Federal Reserve System printing all this money?